Hello. Tonight I'm here to state to you the case of why the UK needs to abolish the British monarchy and to become a British republic. First, I want to make it clear what I'm not going to make the case for. I'm not here to tell you that the Queen is an evil and tyrannical dictator, because that is, of course, not what she is. Instead, I put to you the radical idea that she is and always will be a politician, a very unique one albeit, a politician who in a number of ways is above the law, a politician who uses her place in government to ensure her private interests are given special preference and confidence, a politician who has and does claim public money for private trips just as much as any expenses-fiddling MP, and a politician who, despite all of this, is still given overwhelmingly positive media coverage and venerated as a symbol of our country. And of course, other members of her family enjoy much of the same privileges. Myself and my colleagues in the Republic firmly believe in a future when our head of state could be potentially anyone, chosen by the ballot instead of by birth. We believe that this position should not be centred in the power of a single family, in order to reflect our values as a democracy and a meritocracy. Put simply, we believe that any British child should potentially be able to one day become head of state. Currently, the royal prerogative powers that used to be in the care of the monarch are invested in one person, the leader of the government, the Prime Minister. The royal prerogative powers that have never been properly accounted for in full include the power to sign treaties, the appointment of peers, and the power to declare war. The Queen herself retains the power to withhold a royal assent to a piece of legislation, the power to dissolve Parliament, and the power to appoint a Prime Minister. We argue that this represents a potentially dangerous concentration of power within the hands of the Prime Minister. As regards the monarch, we see these powers being retained in her hands as indefensible to a democratic nation. Our solution is to replace the monarchy with a freely elected president. The royal prerogative powers would be more evenly divided between the president and the prime minister, as it currently is between them and the monarch. The idea is to provide a check to the power of the current executive. The president will be elected into fixed terms that through elections separate from the legislature. Now, if this was a debate, I would soon be expecting to witness a common tactic of the royalist opposition. Sooner or later, they would use the word president and bring out a rogues gallery of characters. All of a sudden, images are conjured up of Mugabe-type despots, or the near omnipotent power of the US presidents. I find it interesting how they mention those types of presidents, but they do not mention presidents like Nelson Mandela, a freedom fighter who cut his presidential salary. Let me be clear. We would not just carbon copy another country's model. Of course, we've learned from other examples, good and bad. But we believe the exact nature of the British presidency should be a subject of debate. It is ours to define. Presidencies tend to fall into two categories: very powerful and politically involved ones, like France and the US is, or ceremonial and constitutional ones, such as the Irish and German presidencies. Our current model shares many similarities to the Irish model. The current constitutional setup leaves the Queen with an unusual dilemma. On the face of it, she is forced to keep silent on political and cultural issues in order to avoid falling into the trap of being a political, unelected head of state. Royalists may argue that her relative silence and relegation to mostly ceremonial duties proves the case to keep the status quo. Our objections to this are twofold. One, we believe that this arrangement robs us of a potentially dynamic leader that could provide a vital check on executive power. Instead, we are left with a very expensive puppet. We also do not agree with the assertion that the Queen or the royal family is politically neutral. No one is completely politically neutral. Last year, BBC security correspondent Frank Gardner revealed on Radio 4 that the Queen had lobbied the Home Secretary about the possible extradition of the radical cleric Abu Hamza to the US. The story here is not that the Queen dislikes terrorists and was looking to make sure this one was punished. Granted, the news that the Queen dislikes terrorists is very reassuring, but this directly contradicts the myth that she is a non-political, unelected public official. Within the House of Commons itself, direct criticism of members of the royal family is forbidden. General criticisms of the institution are accepted, but not criticism directed at individuals. These rules nearly led to an MP being expelled from the chamber for asking questions regarding corruption allegations concerning Prince Andrew. We in Republic see this as a completely unjustifiable restriction on the speech of our elected representatives. In terms of transparency, the monarchy remains one of the most evasive and secretive British institutions. It was only in 2002, when annual spending reports were published by them. These reports are incomplete and heavily spun. We know this because the figures simply do not add up. Attempts by us at the public to get some clarification about these discrepancies have been unsuccessful due to the institution ignoring our freedom of information requests. When it comes to public money that hasn't been allocated to them specifically, the royal family have shown a cavalier disregard for using it for their own ends. In the winter of 2010, aides to the Queen inquired about the possibility of Buckingham Palace using money from community energy funding, which is a council grant intended for families on low income, to pay for the palace's heating costs. Prince Charles, in 2011, Prince Charles billed the taxpayer £13,000 for a London to Scotland flight, which he used to go onto a private break. The justification for this was the claim that the Prince is always on duty. The working royals themselves work on average 7 hours a week, while receiving a pay far exceeding the salaries of most people who work 7 hours a day. We at Republic think it is unacceptable to blame MPs for falsely claiming public money, when several abuses by the royals go largely unreported or ignored. Oh, and on a side note, there is no conclusive proof that the monarchy promotes tourism. In fact, Visit Britain, one of our main tourist organisations, have stated that by their estimates, the UK becoming a republic would have a marginal effect on tourism at best. That being said, I for one believe that our democratic ideals should not be prostituted for money. Put simply, democracy is not for sale. In terms of our culture, I personally find it frustrating how the history of the family seems to be recalled through rose-tinted spectacles. People recall the King's speech, but they forget the Duke of York leading men to the slaughter through his incompetence as a commander. They recall the philanthropy of the glamorous Princess Diana, but they forget about a time when Parliament paid off the debts of the Prince of Wales when our country stood on the brink of invasion. If we were to have a presidency, we Republicans would not erase our royal history. In fact, we encourage people to read it. By taking the step of electing a head of state, we would be making history. Being British should be about questioning authority, not being subservient to it. Fighting for freedom is what makes this country great. From the peasants' revolt, to fighting off Napoleonic tyranny, to the suffragettes, to fighting fascism. This country is bigger than one family. Now is the time to stand up and say so. Thank you for listening. Where are you?
Are you taking questions? Or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I find it kind of strange how you say that freedom fighting is what makes this country great. Because, in my opinion, like Ozzy Osbourne and stuff like that, so, like, why specifically the freedom fighting? Why is that specifically that makes our country great? What about other countries? Why wouldn't it be what makes them great? Surely there are other things that make this country great.
I don't think we've done very much freedom fighting, really.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what I'm saying, Ozzy Osbourne.
Because freedom fighting deficit at the moment. But what I was trying to articulate is that I think our radical tradition, as in the fight to expand male suffrage and female suffrage, obviously, and increase rights for people, I think that stands in contrast to our history when it comes to the monarchy, because often, if you look through the history, the figures within the institution have stood against many of those reforms they have. And yet that position is hardly mentioned. So I think what I'm trying to say is not so much that our country is best to everyone else at fighting for freedom. I just say that tradition deserves to be given more sort of primacy over the tradition of the monarchy. Does that better explain it? I'm not trying to say that we do it better than other countries, but
That's what I mean.
Don't you think it's pretty amazing how one thing that surprises me about our royal family, and I can't really explain it very much, is that they are adored around the world. If you look at the Dutch royal family, in Spain, I fucking hate their royal family. And in the Dutch royal family seems to be pretty irrelevant, same with the Norwegians, apart from in Norway, Denmark, all the others. No one knows who they are. Everyone knows who Queen Elizabeth is. Millions, hundreds of millions of people tuned in to watch William and Kate get married, to watch the Diamond Jubilee. And I almost feel proud of the royal family because foreign countries like Britain because of them. It's amazing how much goodwill there was about it. I'm trying to kind of, it's not a question as such. I was just kind of like, you were talking about how they don't make a difference in our standing in the rest of the world and in our and tourism and things like that. And I totally disagree with that. I don't think that's fair. People love the monarchy.
No, they don't come here to see the Queen, the royal family. We have the royal sites and so forth, but no tourists seriously come here to think they can have tea with the Queen and so forth.
No, they don't, but they do think it's part of the brand, and it's an incredibly powerful part of the brand. People were saying how Margaret Thatcher's funeral was like a large political broadcast for the Conservative Party, and to a certain extent that was right. In the same way, anything that gets broadcast around the world about Britain, that's great for us. And it was such a grand occasion. It was a free advertisement for Britain around the world. And it was I think it's not just about the tourism, although it will help with that. It's kind of part of the brand. It also provides respect for our country that our politicians will never be able to offer. No one likes politicians, and politicians hate other politicians. They hate the politicians of other countries as well. There's real respect for especially this Queen and for the royal family in this country in general. And I know that from reading all the biographies and autobiographies of foreign statesmen that I have, because I'm a political geek, and of this country as well. So I think it's a really big part of brand Britain that you would be getting rid of by doing that.
Okay, so that's a statement more than a question.
I was hoping that you would challenge it.
Okay.
That's kind of what I was hoping.
Well, I would say all that respect and so forth that goes towards the Queen and that. I think they have an unfair advantage in that they're not looked at in any way near the same kind of light as those politicians, government the earth, etc., who you talked about. And I think that's a shame, because I think that says a lot about us as the sort of facade as we are, as we say we're a democracy, but I think in that way we're not. I think in that way they deserve to be more brought into it. I mean, you can just see, like, from a BBC angle, if something happens with the royal family, the BBC says, well, we have the spokesman for the Prince of Wales or something here. They don't say the Prince of Wales declined to comment. They say we have our spokesman here. We accept different rules to the royal family out of virtue of them being royal, and I think that's wrong in meritocracy. When it comes to the popularity, I don't dispute that they're popular and that, but I don't think they should be. I don't think they're anything to be proud of. I didn't ask them to be there. I wish I had to say and then be there. If I win an election and lost by 75%, that's fair enough. That's democracy. But I haven't had the choice. It's the sense of entitlement. and that which they're brought up to feel, and that which they have there. And we haven't had the chance for our talk there, even to be overwhelmingly voted against. And that is, I think even that, I think I have every, we should have had the chance to probably have a debate about it. We don't, because of the subservience of the media, as it does at the moment, and their fear of seemingly unpatriotic or so forth, or disrespectful in not criticising the family. I don't think we need democratic scrutiny tradition on the royal family, and it's not there, because we hang on to this idealising of the past. We want us to be promoted through tourism, and we don't want to change things because we want to basically sit back and enjoy how things are going. But because of that, we're almost looking outwards at people looking at us, but we don't think about the things that are wrong with our system. And I think there are things that are wrong with our system. Maybe it promotes a good feeling, but I don't think it doesn't promote reform and soul-searching in that way. I think it's more ego sort of like nurturing rather than actually serious introspection. I think this country needs to do. I don't think it's nearly as united as people say it is. I think the riots around with Thatcher freedom that proved that, and divided. And also the fact that Scotland is having a vote for going out and stuff. I think we're almost like superficially clinging on to these united symbols when we're actually dividing at the seams, and we need to explore that. I don't think the royal family have any answers to